أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يوصي نعمه العادون ولا يودي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بحث الهمم ولا يناله غوص الفتن الذي ليس لصفاته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت محدود ولا أجل ممدود فترى الخلائق بقدرته ونشر رياها برحمته ووتد بالسخر ميدان عرض ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وحبيبنا وحبيب رب العالمين أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعن على أعدائهم أجمعين من أول يوم ظلمهم إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد فقال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المبين وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ما كان إبراهيم يهوديا ولا نصرانيا ولكن كان حنيفا مسلما وما كان من المشركين صدق الله العلي العظيم. Dear brothers and sisters, before we get started, please can you recite a Surah Fatiha for the marhumeen of tonight's sponsor, who is Brother Malik Idris, especially for his mother who had just recently passed away, whose name is Sardar Begum, wife of Malik Nabi Baksh bint Fazl Ilahi. Please recite a Surah Fatiha for Brother Malik Idris' marhumeen, especially his mother that had just recently passed away. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم بسم الله Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The last few nights we've been talking about, or we've been going over the life of Nabiullah Ibrahim alayhi salam and seeing what lessons we can derive from his life. And tonight we will look at the part of his life which started after meeting Lady Hajira salawatullah alayha and the events surrounding his firstborn son, Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam, and some of the events that happened between this father and this son. To begin with, yesterday we had left off at Nabiullah Ibrahim, him leaving from one of the cities in Balad al-Sham where he met this king, and the king, he became a Muslim of that time, meaning that he became, or he accepted Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam as a prophet, and he accepted Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the one true God. And Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, before he left this king, he gave one of his servants, who he said was very intelligent, he gave this maidservant of his to Lady Sarah salawatullah alayha, and Hazrat Ibrahim, he left with Lady Hajira, and the servant was Lady Hajira, and he left with Lady Hajira, Lady Sarah, and his cousin Lut alayhi salam, and they left from that place. But Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, he said that Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he settled in Sham, and when Ismaeel alayhi salam was born to Hajira, Lady Sarah salawatullah alayha, she was devastated because no child had been born from her yet. And Lady Sarah, she became upset and she began to bicker with Lady Hajira, which caused uneasiness in Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam. And when he complained to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he received a revelation that Hajira should be separated from Sarah. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where should he take Hajira? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he replies, towards my sanctuary, the place that I have appointed to be safe for whoever seeks refuge in it, and it is the part of land that I created first on this earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that take Hajira to the land of Makkah, take her to Makkah. From this narration we learn that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the first landmass that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created, or the first land that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created, on earth was Makkah. Jibreel alayhi salam, when this order was given Jibreel alayhi salam, he comes, he brought a ride from heaven, and Hazrat Ibrahim, Hazrat Ismaeel and Hajra, they mounted this ride, and it left towards Makkah. And whenever the narration states that whenever they passed by a place that looked decent for living, meaning that there was greenery and there were pastures, Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he asked Jibreel, he would always ask Jibreel if this was the place, or if this was the place that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended for his family to live. And Jibreel, he would reply in the negative, and he continued to lead them ahead. At last they reached Makkah. Jibreel, he landed them by the holy Kaaba, and Ibrahim alayhi salam, he had promised Sarah that he would not get down from the mount until he returns to her. One of the reasons that Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam respected Lady Sarah so much was because Lady Sarah herself was the daughter of a prophet, meaning her ancestors were also prophets. So Lady Sarah, she had told Ibrahim, she had asked Ibrahim, do not dismount until you come back to me, meaning that you just leave them there and you come back to me. So Hazrat Ibrahim, because of the respect that he had for her, he said, okay, I won't dismount. So he went with them, he left them there, and he was coming back towards Lady Sarah. When Hajar and Ismaeel, they descended, where were they? They were in the vicinity of, they were in the city of Mecca, but they were between Safa and Marwa, and there was a tree in the valley between Safa and Marwa. And Hajara, she put down a cloth, or she put down a board underneath the tree, and she settled there with her son. She stayed there, or she sat down there with her son Hazrat Ismaeel. And when Hazrat Ibrahim was leaving, Hajara salawatullah alayha, she asked him, in whose care are you entrusting us to? And Ya Ibrahim, who are you leaving us to? Who are you leaving us with in this place that is so barren? There's no water, and there are no people around this place. Who are you entrusting us to? Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he says, I am leaving you in the care of the one who has ordered me to leave you here. Meaning, I am leaving you in the care of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he departed. When Ibrahim alayhi salam, he reached a certain mountain, he turned around and he looked at Hajar and he looked at Ismaeel, and he says, Ya Allah, he prays to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, O my Lord, I have certainly settled my son in a dry and desolate valley near your exalted house, so that he may establish the prayers. So I beseech you to divert the attention of some people towards them, that they feel attracted towards them and seek their company, and bestow them with the fruits that they may thank you. Inshallah, we'll get to one of the narrations of Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, when he tells us what this meant when he says that bestow them with fruits that they may thank you. But saying this, he went away from Lady Hajra salawatullah alayha and Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam, and when the sun came to its zenith, when it was basically Zuhr time, Hazrat Ismaeel, he was very thirsty. It's a desolate land. It's basically desert. Back 3,500 years ago, 4,000 years ago, still today, some parts of it are, it's turned into a city now, but before it was a complete desert. So Hazrat Ismaeel, who's still an infant, he's become thirsty. Hajra, she sees that her son has become thirsty and he's crying, and she becomes restless, and she rose from the spot that they were under, and she ran between the valley of Safa and Marwa and cried for help. She lost sight of Ismaeel, and Hajra went to Safa. From there she saw a mirage at Marwa. Thinking it to be water, she went from Safa, she ran towards Marwa. When she reached there, she saw the pilgrims of Kaaba walking slowly, and some were running too. Again she lost sight of Ismaeel, and she became restless. Why? Because now she doesn't see Ismaeel anymore. She's running between Safa and Marwa, and she does this 7 times. And when she does this for the 7th time, she sees a spring of water gushing from below the feet of Hazrat Ismaeel. The narration states that Hazrat Ismaeel, because he became so thirsty, he was pushing the sand that was underneath his foot like a baby. He was a baby, so he was pushing the sand underneath his foot. And when he kept pushing the sand, the narration states that water started gushing from underneath his feet. And Lady Hajra, she sees this water, and she rushed to Ismaeel alayhi salam, and she collected some sand around the water to prevent it from spreading. It was for this reason that this spring was known as Zamzam. Zamzam in that Arabic dialect back to 3,000 years ago, Zamzam meant stop, stop. And Lady Hajra, when she was putting the sand around, she would say that, and because of that, it's known as Zamzam. Imam alayhi salam, he says that people, they avoided that route through Mecca because it was arid. There was no water, there was nothing there. It was, when it was summertime, it got very hot. When the sun rose and it came to zenith, it was very hot around that time. So Ismaeel alayhi salam, he thrust his feet on the ground, and due to that extreme thirst, and suddenly the spring of Zamzam, it began to gush out near his feet. And at that time, the Imam, he says that at that time, a group of traders, they were passing by, and they saw that birds were circling the area where Hazrat Ismaeel had just unveiled the spring of Zamzam. And because they saw birds circling above that area, these traders, they understood that those birds were attracted by the water that was there. And these traders, they also came near Lady Hajra and offered them some food in exchange for the water. When Lady Hajra would give them water, well, they would ask for permission for water, she would give them permission. In exchange, these traders, they would give Lady Hajra things to eat in return, food to eat in return. And whenever travelers reached that area, they came for the water and gave food to Lady Hajra. There was a tribe, the Imam, he says that there was a tribe by the name of Jurham that was camped in the plains of Arafah. Arafah still exists today, which is about 15 to 16 miles from Mecca, which is maybe 24 kilometers from Mecca. But this tribe, it was in the plains, it was about 15 or 16 miles away from Mecca, where this spring was there. So when the water appeared in Mecca and the birds and animals, they rushed towards that water, this tribe also noted this event that was happening. So what did they do? They decided to investigate the incident themselves also. And when they reached the spot, they saw a woman and a child below a tree, and they asked, "Who are you?" When they asked Lady Hajra, she replies, she tells them who she is, and they ask them, how did you come to be here? Lady Hajra, she says that I am the mother of the son of Khalilur Rahman. Khalilur Rahman was the title that Hazrat Ibraheem alayhi salam was known by amongst the believers, and that was a name that he used to go by at that time. So she says, I'm the mother of the son of Khalilur Rahman, and this is my son, meaning Ismaeel, he's my son. And when they ask, how did you come here? She says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, commanded Khalilur Rahman to leave us here. The people, they sought her permission to settle nearby. Now this tribe, they were around Mount Arafah, they were around the valley of Arafah, 15, 16 miles away. When they see this water, they come here and they ask for permission to settle here. So what happens, or they ask for permission to settle nearby this spring. What happens is that on the third day, Ibraheem alayhi salam, he comes back to see how Lady Hajra and how Ismaeel are doing. And Lady Hajra, she sees her husband Hazrat Ibraheem, and she says, "O friend of Allah, Ya Khalilullah, there's a tribe by the name of Jurham in the neighborhood. Its people desire to settle near us. Do you give them permission? Do you permit them to settle here?" Ibraheem alayhi salam, he gave them permission, and they came near and pitched their tents. Hajra and Ismaeel, they became attached to these people, and when Ibraheem alayhi salam, he visited them the third time, he saw a multitude of people surrounding them, and he was pleased. Why was he pleased? It was because Ibraheem alayhi salam, he had prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he left them. He had prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that do not leave my family alone here. Make people come towards them. Put love or instill love in the hearts of some people so that they would come towards them. And when Ismaeel alayhi salam, he grew up, each member of the Jurham tribe, they gave him 1 or 2 sheep, and as a result he became the owner of a huge flock of sheep, and he began to spend a peaceful life until he attained maturity. So Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam, his whole life he lived around the Mecca area. His whole life he was taken there when he was an infant. From that time on until he passed away, he lived his life in the vicinity around the Kaaba. When he attained the age of maturity, and you have to remember, brothers and sisters, that so many narrations from Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, from Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam, from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, the narrations, they state that the way that the prophets and the imams grow is not the same as the regular people. The imams and the prophets, they grow quicker, they attain maturity quicker, physical maturity quicker, mental maturity quicker, spiritual maturity quicker. But when it comes to just physical maturity, there are narrations that state that the imams and the prophets in one day they grow as much as a regular person would grow in a week. In 1 week they grow as much as a regular person would grow in a month, and in 1 month they grow as much as a regular person would grow in 1 year. So when Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam, he attained maturity, meaning he was physically mature, and not just physically mature but spiritually mature also, that's when this sacrifice of Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam comes to existence. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? Surah As-Safat, verse number 103, regarding Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam. فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ مَعْهُ السَّعْيَ قَالَ يَا بُنَيَّ إِنِّي أَرَى فِي مَنَامِي أَنِّي أَسْبَحُكَ فَانْظُرْ مَاذَا تَرَى قَالَ يَا أَبَتِي أَفْعَلْ مَا تُؤْمَرُ. O father dear, do what you have been commanded to. The whole verse is when Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam, he attained maturity, or he attained working to the age where he could work. Hazrat Ibraheem alayhi salam, he looks at his son Ismaeel and he says to him, "O my son, surely I have seen in a dream that I should sacrifice you. Then consider that what you see. Tell me what you believe this to be." Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam, this was spiritual maturity, this was mental maturity. Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam, he says, "Oh father dear, do what you have been commanded to do. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pleases, you will find me of the patient ones, you will find me of the sabirin." Just in this instance, or just in this scene, just in this event, brothers and sisters, there's a lesson for all of us to learn here, especially for the parents. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam is teaching the parents something, and Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam himself is teaching the kids something. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam is teaching us that as a father, if the child has matured and an action or event concerns that child, then their opinion should be taken into account before you go on with that action. Before you go on with that action. Meaning what? Meaning now, for example, in the Pakistani Indian culture, the child has come to age in the sense that they can marry. An example, a child has come to the age where they can marry. Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he's showing us as a parent, now that this child has come to age, if you have an event regarding this child, if there's an action that you want to do that also involves this child, then Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam is showing us, look, the sunnah of Hazrat Ibrahim, and this was the same sunnah of the Holy Prophet, that when this child attains maturity, then you ask them also. You do not go and you force your belief, or you do not go and you force your opinion on the child. If that was the case, Hazrat Ibrahim would have just done what he was commanded to do. The fact that Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he asked Ismaeel what his opinion is regarding that dream, tells you that it becomes necessary when the child reaches the age of maturity that you as a parent, you go and ask that child their opinion in events that have to regard them or events that deal with them. Just the same way, Prophet Ismaeel alayhi salam, he's also teaching us that as a son, what is he teaching us? He teaches us that the parents do what is best for the child. They have the best interest of the child in mind when they make decisions regarding them. Keeping this in mind, they should obey their parents. Keeping this in mind. We've gone past this event in particular. No, we're looking at a lesson that can be learned from this event. And that lesson gets applied in our daily life. I'm not saying no, if tomorrow a parent sees that they're sacrificing their son or their daughter, they should go and do it from the parent's perspective. And I'm not saying if a parent sees that and they come and ask the son or the daughter, the son and daughter to say, yes, just do what you've been commanded. No, because there's a difference between the dreams of a prophet and the dreams of the layman. The dreams of the Prophet, the Imam alayhi salam, the Masumin alayhi salam, they say that the dreams of a prophet, they're commands from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's one of the ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands them to do something. The dreams of a layman, even the Holy Prophet himself, he says that for the dreams of a layman, there are some dreams where shaitan comes in and he puts those dreams and he has an effect on those dreams. So the dreams of a layman are not necessarily commands, or they're not commands from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whereas the dreams of a prophet, they're true and they're commands from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what is Hazrat Ismaeel saying here? Looking at the bigger picture, not the event, but going away from the event, coming out of the event, looking at the bigger picture. Hazrat Ismaeel, he's teaching us, look, the parents, they're more often than not, they're looking at the best interest of the child. They're always looking for something that benefits the child. They're looking, or they want to do things that will benefit their child. They don't want to harm their child. They don't have the intention of harming their child. And because they're always wanting to benefit their child, if they come to you with an opinion, or if they come to you regarding a matter that involves you and they have an opinion, listen to them. Listen to them. Today, neither the parents from the cultural point of view, from the cultural side, neither the parents do what Hazrat Ibraheem does, nor the children do what Hazrat Ismaeel does. Coming to the Holy Prophet in regards to marriage, that's why I use the example of marriage, because this becomes a event of contention within Pakistanis and Indians in this culture. Why? Even other cultures, even other cultures, also Arabic cultures, but this culture, the United States, the Western culture, what is the culture here? The man, he finds his own bride, he finds his own woman. Whereas in the Pakistani, Indian, and Arab cultures, no. What happens is the parents, they look for that. So there's a clash of cultures here. The youngsters that have grown up in this culture, they look at what's going on around them in their society and they want that. The parents, they come from a different culture and they still have their culture in their mind and they want that. They want that. But Ibrahim, when it comes to this, the Holy Prophet, what did he do? When Amir al-Mu'mineen, when a personality like Amir al-Mu'mineen came to the Holy Prophet, asked for Lady Zahra salawatullah's hand in marriage, what did the Holy Prophet do? He was happy, but at the same time, he says, Ya Ali, let me go ask my daughter. No, he didn't just give Lady Zahra salawatullah in marriage to Amir al-Mu'mineen. No. He says, Ya Ali, let me go ask my daughter. This is the way the family is supposed to run. But nowadays, there's disconnect because the parents don't know how to talk to the children. The children don't know how to talk to the parents. Why? Because there's a culture clash. There's a culture clash. But even in this event of Hazrat Ismaeel and Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, many people, they object to this by saying that what kind of God is this that wants human sacrifice? Do you believe in a God that wants his servant to sacrifice their sons? They go on and say that this God that you believe in is worse than the pagan gods. These people, they don't realize, or they don't seem to understand, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had already knew that Ismaeel alayhi salam was not going to be sacrificed. He already knew that he would send a ram in his place, so that this ram would be sacrificed instead of Hazrat Ismaeel. He already knew that. So then what was the point of putting Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam through all of that? What was the point of putting Hazrat Ibrahim through all of that trouble? Because the Quran itself, it says, وَنَادَيْنَاهُ عَنْ يَا إِبْرَاهِيمُ قَدْ صَدَّقْتَ الرُّؤْيَا إِنَّا كَذَلِكَ نَجْرِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And we called out to Ibrahim, saying, Ya Ibrahim, you have surely fulfilled the vision, thus do we reward the good. Most surely this is a manifest trial, and we ransomed him with a great sacrifice. Inshallah, these are verses of Surah Al-Safat, verses 104 to 107. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? He tells us what this was. He himself, he tells us that it was a trial. Inna haza lahu bala'ul mubin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, most surely this was a manifest trial. This was a test of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam. When Hazrat Ibrahim did not have a son from Lady Sarah salawatullah alayha, he prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a son. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had told Hazrat Ibrahim, Ya Ibrahim, I will give you a son, but you should be aware that I will also test you through this son. Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he had already known that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was going to test him through Hazrat Ismaeel. But did he know how he was going to be tested? No. That was for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to decide. And this is how he wanted to test him. Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he's given the title of what? Khalilullah, the friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a narration when the angel of death, it came for Hazrat Ibrahim. Hazrat Ibrahim asked what he's here for, and the angel says, Ya Ibrahim, it's time now, it's time for you to return to your Lord. So Hazrat Ibrahim, he looks at the angel of death and he says, what kind of friend is this that wants his friend to be killed? What kind of friend is this that wants his friend to be killed? And the angel of death, he goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he tells Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, you heard what your Khalil said. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tells the angel to go back down and ask my friend, what kind of friend is this that doesn't want to meet his friend? When he said this, the angel of death, he came back down and he says this to Hazrat Ibrahim, and Hazrat Ibrahim, he says, alright, I'm ready, take me to meet my friend. But in regards to this sacrifice, we see that this objection that people have, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is someone that wants human sacrifice. No, Allah does not want human sacrifices. This sacrifice, it was indeed a great and momentous occasion when two men of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they stood ready to offer to Allah that which was dearest to them, to seek His pleasure. What was dear to Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam was his son. What was dear to Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam was his life. Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam was willing to give up his son for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam was willing to give up his own life for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This great manifestation of devotion and surrender to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which was the real purpose of the trial. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just wanted to see, He wanted to show the angels, all of the creatures, this aspect of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, how much Hazrat Ibrahim had given himself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this devotion and surrender was the real purpose of this trial. It wasn't blood or flesh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does He do? He postpones this sacrifice to a future date, so that the devotion and surrender to Allah's will should be demonstrated in a greater degree than what Hazrat Ibrahim and what Hazrat Ismaeel could achieve. And this service Imam Hussein alayhi salam performed many years later. Where? In the land of Karbala. Imam Hussein alayhi salam himself was a descendant of Hazrat Ibrahim and Hazrat Ismaeel. And that's why he's also known as, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that we have sacrificed this, or we have ransomed him with a great sacrifice. وَفَدَيْنَاهُ بِذِبْحِ الْعَظِيمِ. And we have ransomed him with a great sacrifice. I've already done a lecture previously about what this great sacrifice is, and because we don't have time, I don't want to continue to go into that aspect of what that great sacrifice is, because this Sunni Mufassirin, they say, or the Ahl Sunnah, they say that this great sacrifice, what is meant by this great sacrifice was that ram that was sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whereas the Shias, we say, no, how can this ram be greater than Hazrat Ismaeel himself? But I don't want to go back into that again, because I've already explained that before. But when Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he came to know that Hazrat Ismaeel wasn't going to be sacrificed, he was disappointed that he was not allowed to sacrifice Hazrat Ismaeel, and that he was denied the rewards that he would have earned for sacrificing his son for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he asked him, Ya Ibrahim, who is the most beloved to you? Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he says, Ya Allah, there's no one more beloved to me than Muhammad al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he asked him, Ya Ibrahim, do you value your life more or the life of Muhammad al-Mustafa? Hazrat Ibrahim, he replied, Ya Allah, I love him more than my life. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he asked him, whom do you prefer, his son or your own son? Hazrat Ibrahim, he replied, Ya Allah, I love his son. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he asked him, Ya Ibrahim, would you be pained more to see him slaughtered by his enemies, or slaughtering your own son with your own hands? Would that be more painful? Hazrat Ibrahim, he replies, Ya Allah, it would be more painful if his son is slaughtered by his enemies. Then that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he revealed to Ibrahim, Ya Ibrahim, a group claiming to be from the community of Muhammad, meaning Muslims, after the holy prophets or after Muhammad's passing away from this world, would slaughter his son just like a ram is slaughtered, and they would become eligible for my wrath. After listening to this prophecy, Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he became sorrowful, and he began to weep profusely, and he started crying. That's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says to Ibrahim, Ya Ibrahim, I have taken this lamentation, I have taken this sorrow of yours as the ransom of your son Ismaeel, for you would have lamented in the same way had you slaughtered Ismaeel with your hands. I bestow with you with the best of the rewards given to those people that wait, or given to those people that are patient due to affliction. This is the explanation. Imam Jafar Sadiq, he says that this is the explanation of the words, we ransomed him with a great sacrifice. Meaning that we ransomed that pain of Hazrat Ibrahim, the pain that he would have had in slaughtering his son or in sacrificing his son. We ransomed that pain with the pain of the sacrifice of Abu Abdullah Hussein al-Islam. There is no comparison, brothers and sisters, between Hazrat Ismaeel, the personality, and Abu Abdullah Hussein al-Islam, the personality. No, there is no comparison there. Where is Imam Hussein al-Islam and where is Ismaeel al-Islam? But the comparison there is what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the comparison there is what would have been more sorrowful, or what is there more pain in? Is there more pain in Hazrat Ismaeel al-Islam being sacrificed? Or is there more pain in Abu Abdullah Hussein al-Islam being sacrificed? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he replies to Ibrahim alayhi salam, Ya Ibrahim, we ransom that pain that you would have had for slaughtering or sacrificing your own son with a greater pain, which is the pain that you felt for crying over Abu Abdullah Hussein alayhi salam. But Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, he says that Ismaeel alayhi salam, he married a woman by the name of Sama. And one day Ibrahim alayhi salam, he desired to see Ismaeel, and he mounted his horse and he came towards Makkah. And Sarah sallallahu alayha, she had told him, Ya Ibrahim, You can go see him, but please do not descend from your mount. So Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he goes towards Makkah, and when he reached Makkah, by this time Lady Hajira salawatullah alaiha, she had already passed away. And Hazrat Ibrahim, he sees a woman in the house of Ismaeel, and he asks her, "Where's your husband?" And the woman, she replies that he's gone hunting. And Ibrahim, he asked her of their well-being, and she said that they were in extreme difficulties and life was a burden. Life was a burden for them. But when she said this, after she finished, she stayed quiet. She didn't even bother inviting Nabiullah Ibrahim alayhi salam inside to the house. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he says, when your husband returns, tell him an elderly person had come and advised that he change his base. Before he left, he saw the way this woman was. He picked up on her character, and before Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam left, he tells her, when your husband returns, tell him that he needs to change his base. And inshallah we'll get to what that means. When Ismaeel alayhi salam, he returned, he smelled the fragrance of his father, and he asked his wife, did anyone come by? And she says, yes. An old man came, and he told me to tell you that you have to change your base. On hearing this, Ismaeel alayhi salam, he divorced her. Once again, Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, some time passes, and Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he wants to see Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam again. And he asks Lady Sarah, and Lady Sarah gives him permission, but she tells him the same thing. Ya Ibrahim, please do not dismount from your horse. Go see your son and come back. And when Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he reached Makkah, again Ismaeel alayhi salam, he was not home. But Ismaeel, this time he had married another woman. And Hazrat Ibrahim, when he gets to his house, he asks that woman, where's your husband? And this lady, she says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shower you with His mercy. My husband's gone for hunting. And when Ibrahim asked her how they were doing, about their well-being, she replies that they were quite happy. And when he asked her how she was doing particularly, she replies, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy and blessings are upon us. Please, she says, please step down from your mount. May Allah bless you, and rest a little bit until Ismaeel alayhi salam, he returns from his hunt. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he declined that invitation. Why? Because he had already promised Lady Sarah salawatullah alaiha that he would not dismount from his ride. So when he wouldn't dismount, she requested him to bring forward his head so that she could wash it, or she could clean his head, because there was dirt, dirt on his body and his clothes and his head. Saying this, what did she do? She goes and she brings a stone, and she brings some water. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he rested one of his foot on the stone, and keeping the other foot in the stirrup, and he allowed her to wash one side of his head. And then he rested the other foot on the stone, and then she washed the other side of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam's head. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he blessed her, and he said, when your husband returns, tell him that an elderly man, he had come and left a message that he should care and guard this base. It is beneficial for him. When Ismaeel alayhi salam, he returned from his hunt, again he smelled the fragrance of his father, and he asked his wife if they had a visitor. His wife, she replied, Ya Ismaeel, yes, we had a visitor, an elderly gentleman, he paid us a visit, and this is the impression that he left, the impression of his foot that he left on this stone over here. What is the story behind this, brothers and sisters? What is the lesson? Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam, first he had one wife. Why did Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam divorce one wife and he stay with the other? One of the reasons could be that the first wife wasn't happy with her life. She complained of hardship, and that too to a total stranger. She didn't ask this person who he is. Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he's come. She hasn't asked this person who he is to a total stranger. She divulges everything that is happening inside the house to a total stranger. And she seemed unhappy with the life that they were living. So Hazrat Ibrahim, he tells her, tell your husband when he returns that this base, meaning the wife, tell your husband that this base he needs to change his base. So he does. He divorces his first wife and he marries a second wife. Now when he comes again and he sees this second wife, look at the manners, the character of this second wife. Hazrat Ibrahim comes, he asks how she's doing, or he asks how they're doing. What is the first thing that comes out of her mouth? The first thing that comes out of her mouth is, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. Then she says that with the grace, with the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're doing fine. Then he asks her how she is doing particularly. And she says, Alhamdulillah, we're perfectly happy, we're perfectly fine. Meaning what? Whether male or female, brothers and sisters, in married life or in life in general, there will be time when you don't have a lot. There will be time when you do have more than you need. The meaning what? Meaning there will be good times and there will be bad times. But when times are bad, you don't complain to others, especially strangers. You don't divulge the secrets of the house, or you don't tell strangers everything that's going inside the house. No. Times will be good, times will be bad. It's not like your whole life it will be completely hopeless and completely useless and completely bad. No. But this first wife of Hazrat Ismaeel, this was the type of character she had. The second wife of Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam, no, her character was completely different. It didn't matter how they were living, she was completely happy. She was completely happy. Even though they didn't have whatever they had, they didn't have a lot, she was completely happy with what they had. And when it came time for building the Kaaba, those drapes, the first person to put drapes on the Kaaba was the wife of Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam. She's the one who made she's the one who made drapes out of cloth, and she put those drapes on the Kaaba. And then it later, throughout the generations, cloth or those drapes continued to be placed on the Kaaba. Initially, it was just 4 walls that were built, and what had happened was she had drapes put on some of the walls as much as she could get done before the next Hajj. So when pilgrims they came, they saw that people were making this house better. They started to give gifts. They started to give money. And what happened? She made another drape for the other side. Like this, there were 4 drapes on the 4 sides. There wasn't a roof yet. Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam, he's the one who put the roof of the Kaaba himself. First he used wood, and then he made cement, and he put rocks and stuff, and he put the roof of the Kaaba. But brothers and sisters, the narration Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, he says that Hazrat Ismaeel alayhi salam was 130 years old when he passed away. And where is he buried? He's buried near his mother in Hijr Ismaeel, where Masjid al-Haram, by the Kaaba. To this day, they're buried there. And inshallah, brothers and sisters, we'll end our lecture here tonight. Tomorrow is the Jashan of Imam Hassan al-Mushtaba alayhi salam, our third Imam, or second Imam, sorry. Tomorrow is the Jashan of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, our second Imam. Inshallah, we will do a lecture on Imam Hassan tomorrow, and the day after will be 2 lectures dealing with Imam Hassan tomorrow, inshallah, on his life. And the next day, inshallah, we'll do a lecture about the conditions. A lot of people have this question: why did Imam Hassan alayhi salam, why did he come to agreement with Muawiyah la'natullah alayh? And so we'll have 2 days for Imam Hassan alayhi salam, and the second day, inshallah, on Saturday, we'll look into the conditions that Imam Hassan alayhi salam placed before he went into that agreement with Muawiyah la'natullah alayh. And then after that, inshallah, we'll continue our topics until the Shahadat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and we'll talk about Amir al-Mu'mineen from there. But brothers and sisters, I think this is enough for tonight, but please, can you all recite the Surah Fatiha for the marhumeen of Brother Malik Idris, especially for his mother who had just recently passed away, Sardar Begum. Please recite a Surah Fatiha for them. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Inshallah, brothers and sisters, I will see you all again tomorrow.